So, folks, welcome. You're coming from my kitchen today. I thought I'd change things up a little bit and give us a bit of a different scenery. We're all working from home, so I'd like to show you that we're doing the same thing. All right, I've got a big list of things here, so I'll get straight into it, guys. We've obviously got the 10 things that have been spoken about in the EDM that went out on Friday. So I'm going to use that as an agenda. For those that didn't have or didn't get the guide or download the guide prior, because I'm a nice guy, I'm going to hit in the chat bot. There's the link to the guide we'll go over today. So if you haven't already got that, you can download it. You don't have to punch shit in. It's not one of those get your information so that we can market more crap to you things. That's genuinely there for you to be able to help it. For it to be able to help you, you'll also realise that it's quite complex, and that's kind of a big part of what I'm going to talk about today. So there's the link. A couple of tiny bits and pieces that I'll go over, which were my initial notes. I've got documents everywhere here. First and foremost, guys, again, I'll thank everyone for their support in relation to this. This will be a weekly thing moving forwards. Coronavirus or no coronavirus. The concept is that I'm getting really good feedback from business owners that this is able to allow them to see they're not alone. And that's part of the concept of all this. Business is really hard, guys. So the concept is to be able to share what that looks like. Geez, it's bloody hard to try to do this thing. So the plan is to be able to allow business owners to see that they're not alone. I have these same challenges when I run a business myself. So if we realise we're all in this together, then that certainly helps things. So just a reminder, you can find it on YouTube and you can also find it on Facebook moving forwards. All of the old links are there. You can share them as much as you like. The guide, I've ticked on that. Bang, bang, bang. A couple of you, believe it or not, there's been a couple of people say they actually want to buy MWM shirts. You don't need to buy them. If you're actually that interested in being proud to wear an MWM shirt, let me know. We'll get a bunch of these. We're getting a bunch made up for the team next week. It's pretty cool if people want to wear boring accountant shirts. So thanks to you that want to do that. Big announcement, folks, today. Most of the people on the list are clients. I'll get a bit sloppy and emotional at this point, which is that during this week, I'll be making a public announcement around what I feel my obligations as the owner of a reasonable size accounting practice is. Last year, we did some stats and we actually added up approximately our client revenue base in terms of how much revenue they contribute to the economy, how many employees they have, and what their debt piece is relative to all that. And those numbers are actually quite staggering. From my perspective, the role of the accountant's changed a lot over the years. It's very much an advisor role these days. I've said to a lot of people this week that when they've asked how we are going, it's grand final day every day for us at the moment. If you want to be an accountant and you want to help people get through things, now more than ever, it's critical that we do that. And I don't think it's the right thing to do, and I don't think it's the Australian thing to do for advisors to be looking to profiteer out of this in any way, shape or form. Our job is to help get the economy through. And as a result, we play a pivotal role in that. From my perspective, I've committed effective from the 1st of April, so this is a backdated thing for those of you that have spoken to me, that I will be giving all of my time away for free in April with any of our clients to help support them through strategy and peace. The days have pretty much been 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. days, 5 to 6 days a week at the moment, helping clients. I love that shit, so it's not really an issue. And the team have stepped up tremendously as well. So if as a leader myself, I can make a small contribution by supporting the businesses that are loyal clients of ours, and equally supporting my own team. I've got an obligation to make sure that my team of 25 plus, we get them through this as well, and they have security because they're showing loyalty to the brand and their commitment to making sure that we help our clients. Obviously, there's only so many hours in the day, but the concept will be that I will be available at all hours to support all of you through it, Monday through Sunday. I don't give a shit what time it is. I don't give a shit what day it is. Our job is very much to get you through this, and I want to demonstrate some leadership in that area to let you know how important you all are to us. And I'm actually going to encourage partners of other professional service firms as well. Traditional accounting pieces is not the only thing that's needed now. Now more than ever, the advisory piece and the high level strategic direction is critically important. So I'm going to lead from the front from that, and I'm going to ask other partners around Australia to consider that. We're going to do a bit of a log on it just to demonstrate how committed we are to those things. There will be some minor T's and C's around. Obviously, we need to make sure that you're organised in that sense and space, and the relationship's on track. So that'll be where I'll be using the team and your respective managers and accountants and client service coordinators to get all those things organised. And if there's things that they can't quite help with, or there's things that they want to double check or bounce off me for, I am here as a resource. I'm 130% committed to making sure we get through this and we give it absolutely everything that we've got. So that's my commitment to all of you. From here forwards, we will be doing a mail out specifically in relation to that early in the week, just to get everyone clear on exactly what that means. But understand that if you're talking to me and it's COVID-19 related and strategic direction around getting your business going, I will in no way, shape or form be sending anyone an account for that this month. That's a commitment from us. Now, onto the juicy stuff. Guys, all of this is complex. I've spent most of yesterday and half of this morning pouring through a very large amount of documents in this area. And if you can't understand all of this, you're not alone. It's very clear there are gaps in relation to these things. And so when I talk about everything today, I want you to all understand that unfortunately, it is still a moving piece. There are still blank spots. We need to work through what they are. None of these monies, or none of these key monies, especially around the JobKeeper, JobSeeker, and the JobKeeper in particular, can be accessed until 01 May. So I think this week it's more about getting clear on what those definitions are and what you're doing with your team members, because there are backdating provisions in relation to that. It's also important for us to consider today how the stimulus integrates with each other. I've had quite a few people make comment to me during the week to say, oh, geez, that's not really fair. But if we then overlay each different piece, I've got to work out which way the camera is now, I'm home instead, each different piece of stimulus on top of each other, you may find that, well, this one over here you thought applied to you and it really doesn't. But as a result, there's some things happening on this side of the deck which compensate you in a different way. And that's the big challenge with the stimulus piece, is understanding how they all plug together, like I've been saying for some time, at a local, state and federal level. They've got competing jurisdictions, competing legalities, and as a result, it's a bit difficult to wade through. But I can absolutely assure everyone, as I've been involved in a few of these phone calls at state and federal levels, the government is absolutely doing their best to be able to work through this. And what we talk about today, I might have egg on my face at the end of next week, because they may have changed that again. I will, as a polite reminder, say I did call the JobSeeker, JobKeeper concept out on the Sunday night. And for those of you that didn't see it, I'm bragging about it on the MWM advisory page. So there was a snippet in there about that. So let's get into it. Folks, we've got the there's a big, long book that you've got for 45 pages of things. I'm kind of going to be looking at that and I'll be up at the same time. What I probably wouldn't mind doing with the Q&A bot is when we're talking about each individual topic, folks, let's do the Q&A as we go, because we might get to the end and we'll find it'll get a bit hard. So JobKeeper, JobSeeker, a couple of key points as a whole. Let's talk JobKeeper for the moment instead of JobSeeker. JobKeeper, the concept is that ultimately from 01 March forwards, the government will look to compensate you in a backdated format for paying wages for your staff for the next 6 months. I'm going to cover off on some high-level areas in relation to that. I'll dispel some myths, and I'll also encourage us to look at some Treasury documents as we go. In relation to the 750, there is a concept being spoken about around downturn in business. And so people are unsure, does it apply to me or does it not? Because I don't know what that 30% looks like. Without it being a plug, this is the time to talk to your accountant. The definition of what that turnover looks like may vary between businesses. If we think about cash accounting, accrual accounting, we talk about revenue versus receipts. We also talk about productivity in relation to what those benchmarks and measures look like. The ATO have given us no strict interpretation, and nor has Treasury, in relation to what constitutes that 30% downturn. If we are to look as a whole at the framework, it's very clear in the framework, and I'll read this from page, I think it's page 10. At the bottom, to establish that a business has faced a reduction in turnover of more than 30%, most businesses will be expected to establish that their turnover has fallen in the relevant month or 3-month period compared with the same period of the previous years. There is flexibility in relation to what periods, and it would appear that if you feel you may not fall into that category for a previous period, over the next 6 months, if you do fall into that category, which I think it's fair to say for the vast majority of businesses you will, then this does apply to you. Now, I can't find anything in the notes yet from Treasury that says, my business is traveling all right and I get to June and then it stops. At what point does the entitlement exist or not around the 750 or the 1500 per fortnight? If we look at all of these things logically, I would imagine it would only apply from the downturn in business forwards, because if your business is traveling okay, the concept from the government side is for them to say, if you're unaffected by this, it should be business as usual. There's been a lot of people out there trying to game the double dip. And whilst I understand that, I really ask everyone to consider, is that the Australian way of doing things? Kerry Packer said it best. There's no way. You're a bloody idiot. You've got rocks in your head if you pay too much tax. I completely understand that. This is not a tax question, folks. This is an ethical question. This is an authenticity question. This is a doing the right thing question. And so the framework as a whole goes on, and this demonstrates it for me. It says, it is expected that the ATO will have some discretion to consider additional information that may establish if the business has been adversely affected. I'll give you classic examples. If you've acquired another business in the last 12 months, then technically your revenue may not drop. However, if you were to pull that out, what would that look like in relative terms? If you'd had a bigger business, which has naturally shrunk over the last 12 months because parts of it have been carved out or sold, well, obviously that would apply to you. But the concept they're very heavily relying upon here is that they will look at a series of measures. I've been talking to my team and I've been talking to other professionals about how are they really going to define this. My personal view is I think we'll see some clarity over the next 2 weeks. I appreciate that's frustrating. I will answer that in a second though. We will see some clarity on that in the next couple of weeks. However, there's a sniff test here. It's the no bullshit test. If the sniff test genuinely says, yes, my business has suffered, then to me, it's quite clear in the intent of where they're going with this is that it will apply. It's simply going to be a question, like it is a lot of the time, that you need to ensure your information's organized correctly, can easily reflect that so that they can tick and flick it. How will they tick and flick it? My gut says to me there will either be a portal where we have to bang information in and we'll electronically be making a declaration in relation to that. I can't see how there will be 10,000 people at the employee individually looking at financial statement after financial statement. It just doesn't work in this day and age. They've also said we can't lodge these documents till 01 May. We can register now, but we can't lodge till 01 May. The reason is they're trying to get organised. There is no such portal to lodge this information in. Remember that, please. So they're building that. What I think will happen, there'll be some sort of portal where you have to make a declaration based on information that gets banged into that. And then I dare say when we're lodging the tax return at the end of the year, there'll be some sort of reconciliation piece to what that sits like or not. And then as a result, down the track, there will be spot testing in relation to, okay, you've said X, you've declared Y, where did you land in relation to that? And are you on the money or not? So for those thinking about gaming the system, while I appreciate that that thought enters a lot of business owners' heads, I think if we're doing the right thing here, and this is a legal term, clean hands, I think if you've got an ex parte application and you go to the courts, I think the rule's something about you must come to them with clean hands as a principle. There they are, there's the hands. If we're doing that, then we're going to give ourselves the best bet and opportunity to make sure that we're successful in obtaining that. Let me also dispel a couple of the truths or myths in relation to all this stuff. The 750 is effectively wages. So if you're an employee or you have employees that have been stood down because they don't have any work, and let's say they earn more than $1,500 a week, it is still unclear in relation to, does that mean you need to go back to paying them full freight? Or does it mean that the 750 will be the baseline amount that you will be paying them? This constitutes a wage, folks. So as a result, employers will be required to withhold tax like they ordinarily would in relation to that, which is going to give rise to the whole concept around single touch payroll and making sure those calculations are done correctly. And now, equally the other way, and a few people have made this comment, if an employer was paying someone less than $750 a week, what happens there? Well, this is the Australian Fair Go principle. And the Australian Fair Go principle is that it equally applies to everyone. So if you're earning if you had an employee earning $400 a week and you've stood them down, but the JobKeeper package applies to you, then you can receive that $750 from the government and pass that on to your employees in full. There's no keeping that money or trying to keep the difference. You will be required to register and you'll be required to pass that on. It is like a wage, so we also have superannuation guarantee obligations to think about and consider in relation to that. And how that piece is calculated, we're still waiting for that information, folks. I keep coming back to the big point is there is a genuine intent that if the business has suffered a downturn, this 750 will apply to you. So that discusses the over and the under. Now, in relation to employees, it also applies, folks, to employees who have been stood down, or if you were an employer and you feel that you've shut the gates in relation to everyone, but now with this assistance and this boost, that can help you re-employ everyone. The concept is to get that employee reconnected with you. So as a result, you can re-employ them and these provisions will apply. They also apply to part-time employees and especially in the hospitality, food, bev and tourism game, where there's a lot of casuals. These provisions also apply with respect to casuals. So it's very important for employers that had casual employees to consider this. It applies to casuals who have been employed on a regular basis for 12 months as at the 1st of March and are at least the age of 16 years and are an Australian citizen, hold a permanent visa, or they're protected by a special category of visa, and they've been residing in Australia for 10 years or more. Really, really important to note, you cannot double dip. So you cannot be a job keeper and a job seeker. There is more benefit in you being a job keeper than there is being a job seeker. So if you are an employer and just a comment, or trying to advise colleagues and clients, but format was way too casual and informal, and the foul language really not necessary. Okay, thank you, anonymous attendee. So if you are an employer and you are considering saying to your team members, well, you can get on the job seeker payment, that is definitely an option for them. The job keeper payment is a higher amount. The job seeker amount are provisions that exist within the general Centrelink rules that have been doubled. And I think broadly as a whole, that works out to be about $500 to $550 a week. It's about $1,000, $1,100 a fortnight. So as a result of that, it is worth sitting down this week with your team members and your key decision makers in your business to establish how can we do this moving forwards. It applies for a 6-month period as well, so it's consistent. I've had quite a few people ask me and say, I don't have the money to pay everyone until the start of May. I understand that. Some of the measures and some of the other stimulus measures they've been talking about here are around providing loans to employers or businesses. And part of the reason for those loans is to pay your wage bill. Mark Boris was on yesterday. I can't remember which program he was on, but he did a great job of demonstrating that from a lender's perspective, the lenders are now looking at, if you are an employer and you know that you will fall into the provision of having a variety of job keeper payments, that is the evidence to go to the bank with to be able to say, here are my obligations in relation to job keeper. This is the amount of money that I will be in receipt of from the government. As a result of that, I need a loan in the interim to pay for that. And then the money that will be received from the government in a bank in that unsecured format, when they loan you that money, you'll be able to pay the wages on that. You'll then receive the money back from the government, and then you'll be able to pay the loan out. I know there's an extra layer that exists in relation to this, but this is all as a result of them trying to get this money out to everyone across a big platform as quick as possible. What else do I need to add in relation to the job keeper, job seeker? I feel like job keeper payment, eligible employees were required to be employed on the 1st of March. There's been talk of people trying to artificially deal with or construct wage policy in relation to that, and I'll get to that in a bit further, especially for owners in a business where the owners in the business historically may take their money out in a different format, so it may not be wages. They may take it in the form of trust distributions or dividends. So we'll separately come to that. So we want employees as of the 1st of March. That's the key time to have them in there. I think they're the main bits in relation to the, okay, Veronica, so if someone was terminated for misconduct and you don't want them to be part of the business moving forwards, do you have to keep them once you become eligible? My understanding is no, Veronica. Misconduct is a separate thing. This is about ordinary course of business. So if you were to terminate someone in an environment where, irrespective of any coronavirus related stuff that you would have done, then the same rules apply. So there's no formal requirement here, and this is important to understand. There is no formal requirement here for you to automatically put everyone on JobKeeper. There are some businesses, and this is part of what's being spoken about at the moment, businesses that have closed down in the last 2 weeks. Is there payroll tax? Yes, it forms part of normal wages. Nick, if you can just put your questions in if you can keep your questions in the Q&A, Nick, that'd be really handy. there is, it does form part of the standard wages, Nick. There is also talk of that becoming an exemption. All of the payroll tax levels, which I think I'll talk about a little bit later on, payroll tax at a state base has been heavily relaxed in any event. So those thresholds will be much more difficult for anyone to achieve. Is JobKeeper available for the staff in the business? Is JobKeeper available for staff if the business has shut their doors? So, good question. There's a big spotlight around what is having your doors shut. Now, if businesses have closed temporarily, hi Jeff, can you put your question in the Q&A bot, please? Keep it out of the chat area. There should be a Q&A area in that. It just keeps it a bit easier for me to get organised. If your business is temporarily ceased, but it is active, and the definition of active is not provided for in the Treasury documents, I would think if you're a retail outlet, as an example, you would still be selling online. So that ABN would still be active. As a result of that ABN still being active, if you elected to be active in more than one format, which could include online, as an example, or taking phone orders if you had a customer base, and then these amounts would entitle you to put team members back in the store, then that would apply. There's also discussions around if the business is active, but the shop front is closed, there are still conversations around the $750 payment will still apply, and it's on the employee and employer to make sure that the employee is in some way, shape or form upskilling, not just sitting on their bum in relation to any of that. They want to be making sure that they're improving skills and finding things that can add value in that business so that when it does reopen, they're ready to go. I have an anonymous attendee for the second time. I have a casual employee that's been with me for 5 months. Where do I stand with him, and can we use the JobKeeper payments? Anonymous attendee, it would appear that the definition as it currently stands for a casual employee is that they need to have been with you for greater than 12 months. That's as of today in relation to the Treasury documents. Whether that becomes subject to change, I'm not sure. However, 12 months is the period of time that they will use as a marker for casual employees. Hi, Marion. Employed as a casual, stood down 2 weeks ago, been employed by the same agency for 2 years, sold the business and a new owner has taken over, keeping the same business name because she took over in October 19. So I believe the JobKeeper doesn't apply to me. I think, Marion, you've raised a really good point there. If we come back to the stimulus measures, these are very broad, folks, and I know it's very frustrating at times. The underlying concept is to make sure everyone in Australia gets a keeper or a seeker. If there are gaps that fall into that, it's then a question of which side do you fall onto or not. And the government does have the ability, the government does have the ability to exercise discretion. So Marion, given you've actually been carrying out the same role in the same function, in the same business, there's a bunch of other rules around business loss tests that talk about continuity of business type. I would think that by virtue of the business continuity type existing, then that would absolutely apply. It'll have to be something that we'll get clarity on. I don't have any more questions there, folks. I was expecting a few more questions. I must have done a good job at maybe answering that. If we have, hang on, there we go. I've got to get across there. Here we go. More questions. Dana. Okay, anonymous. Okay, Roz. So it's only casual employees that are employed for 12 months for eligibility. Permanent part-time employees from 1 month, March. Yes, that's right, Roz. Anonymous. I don't know if this is the same anonymous attendee that told me I'm too rude or not on the camera because I'm a bit too relaxed, or whether that's a separate one. I hope you're not the same anonymous attendee that 1 minute wants to bag the show and then wants to ask more questions. Good on you if you do, but let's keep it positive. In relation to the JobKeeper, what if you haven't lodged your 18-19 tax return? Really good question. So There's been talk of gaming the system and people working out, well, I haven't lodged it yet. There's also been stuff published saying, if you haven't lodged your tax return by the 12th of March, then none of this applies to you. There's a secondary element to that provision that says if you have been lodging activity statements during that period, then they're happy to use the activity statements as a reference point. If you haven't lodged a tax return or a BAS for a couple of years and all of a sudden you decide to lodge them, I think unless you've got extraordinary circumstances, i.e. both my arms and both my legs were cut off, or it's some crazy statement as to why you weren't able to do anything in the last 2 years, they have said that they will exercise discretion if you have been in contact with the ATO and you have relevant grounds for an extension. If you don't have relevant grounds for an extension, you will be pushing it uphill on a wet day with lots of that fun stuff coming down the hill to be able to do that, I think. And they've been talking about some fairly heavy provisions in relation to fraud and making sure that that doesn't go on in the integrity of the system. So not an issue that you haven't lodged your tax return. Provided you've been lodging your BASs, this whole thing integrates in a single touch payroll. That's what they're using. You should all be using single touch payroll by now. Oh, thanks, Guy. Don't worry, you're awesome just the way you are. People will shit can you. It's probably a competitor. Love your work. Thanks, Guy. I'll show off my budgie smugglers at the end just to prove the point. All right, okay, Michelle, if you stand down an employee, but put them on JobKeeper, do you have a guarantee? Do you have to guarantee a job after the 6 months? Thanks, Michelle. Michelle, I'm waving hands here to say somewhat of an extent this is an employment law question. So I will be very careful in how I answer this. My answer is ordinary course of business from what I understand. So if it's the case that in 6 months' time there is a downturn in relation to your business and you just simply can't keep people on at that point, then the relevant ordinary rules would apply. Now, you've raised a really good point, because for me, and I'm a planner, I'm also a bloody terrible planner at points in time, because I don't have to always be organised in every area of my life. But I like to plan, and I have goals and I have ideas. The government's viewpoint right now is just to get us down the track. We're going to talk about rent shortly and what that looks like. I think it's going to be the case that there will be extra things that come out over the next couple of months that make it clearer. Well, shit, what happens at the end? What happens if my business now is just completely different? I don't have those roles anymore. I don't have a use for them in any way, shape or form, because I've gone online, we've gone remote, we've used, we've become electronic, just decided business is too fucking hard. That, as of today, we don't know the answer in relation to that, Michelle. What does my gut say? My gut says that if in 6 months' time the role doesn't exist, then as it currently stands, there would be no obligation to keep the employee on unless mandatory forced by the government. The classic example for me for how much this has changed is all of the changes in relation to the awards that happened this week. So they changed standard operating hours, they changed stand-down provisions, they changed so many pieces of legislation to accommodate employers and employees. And that'll be a moving piece. I think for the moment, let's talk about harmony and keeping our team together and doing the right thing and getting all Australians ticking along for the next couple of months. And I think it starts to become a stay tuned piece. So we may find we'll get 4 to 8 weeks down the track. And by that point in time, I've been horning on for 3 sessions now about getting your business in order, getting things organised, looking at everything you need to do in your business. It'll then be the time to start to enact, well, what do those things look like moving forwards? There's actually a bunch of seminars and the whole day events that I'll be running over the next couple of months about around rebuilding your business. And I dare say we'll be including it at that point in time. Big Steve, what should employees submit in their timesheets despite the shop being closed during the month of April? Good question, Steve. So if they've sat on their ass and haven't done anything for the month, then they actually need to say, I've sat on my ass and I haven't done anything for the month. The legislation's clear that provided the business is active and the ABN is active, the payment exists. Somewhere in the back of some of the Treasury documents I've read is that the government has encouraged the employer and employee where they physically can't work to look at how they upskill in the business. I would think it's the right thing to do for employers to say, hey, look, if you can't go to work, I can still get you this payment because I'm still taking steps. Here's a little project we can do in the interim. Let's clean up our back of house. Let's go and do some online learning courses. Let's not sit on bloody Netflix all day and watch the Tiger Show, whatever that stupid Tiger Show is. I think there's an obligation for us to look to upskill. All right. Okay. Thanks, Steve. What else have we got here? Dana. Sorry, in our case, started a new entity. Yes, that's right. I do think it applies, Dana. There's also been conversations, if your business hasn't traded for 12 months, then yes, these provisions do apply to you. It's simply going to be a question to me of how we demonstrate providing that information to them. So yes, it will apply. Good show, James. Sole trader eligible, job keeper. Mr. Anonymous or Mrs. Anonymous is another one. Sole trader eligible. Yes, they are. So a job keeper is a sole trader. Most important thing for sole traders, guys, you need to register. You don't submit any documents just yet. Don't go and lodge shit so that it creates a bunch of problems for you without getting the information right. But a sole trader is a job keeper. So sole traders, you're not going to be on the job. I always get this too confused. The job seeker payment. You're not on the dole, quote unquote. You're out there having a lash and having a crack, and good on you for doing that. So you'll fall into the job keeper provisions. Diana Fry, hang on, the questions are now coming in thick and fast. That's good, guys. Diana Fry, since we're training apprentices, good question, Di. They are two separate things. So you are either on the apprentice program, from what I understand, and I'm caveating all of this. Whilst they're two different government bodies, the apprentice program will fall under the other regime. I haven't seen anything that says it doesn't, or that you can't get both for an apprentice. And if I think about that, what does an apprentice earn? Well, they're saying it's $7,000 a quarter. So if it was the case that the apprentice picked up a job keeper and an apprentice, what's that? 10, 7.5, 8, 2, 9, 9 and 7, call it 16. So all of a sudden the apprentice is on about $16,000 a quarter. I'm not entirely sure that would be the case, Di. I will come back to that. I'm going to make a note on that one because I think that's a really, really good question. Apprentice and job keeper. Trust you, Di, to come up with the curveballs. Love your work. Kane, I am the company director and an employee. Where do I stand? Where do I stand as I work with a prime contractor that supplies me all my work? That has stopped. Saying that once COVID-19 is done, I'll be flat out. Oh, it's good to hear you be flat out, Kane. That's awesome. I would assume if you're a company director, that by company director, you mean you're a separate legal entity. So on the basis that you're a PTY Ltd and you're an employee of this separate legal entity, it's irrelevant where you get your income from. Your income stopped, then that falls part of these provisions. As a result, if you are paying yourself wages from that separate legal entity, this will apply to you. Dave Percy, if the casual has been employed for less than 12 months and they are now not getting work and you don't know what your structure will look like post-COVID-19, are you better to cease employment and let them have access to the job seeker payment? Yeah, look, I think so. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right, Dave. So the question, folks, is casual has been employed for less than 12 months and they're not getting any work. Are you better to cease employment and get them on the seeker payment? Absolutely, you are. It's not quite the same amount. In saying, well, they're not going to pick up the provisions, Dave. So unfortunately, that's going to be one that'll fall into a little bit of a different gap. If they fall into the seeker category, if they're renters, there might be additional provisions that they get access to, like rent relief, for example, and maybe some family tax benefit style monies and the like. So maybe that will help top them up. Jeff Hoggs, so far my business is still going okay. So do I just need to register for now for the JobKeeper or wait until it gets worse? Great question, Jeff. It doesn't cost anyone to register anything more than a couple of minutes of their time. Guys, you are nuts if you don't register. please make sure you register. Hold at that point in time. We don't actually have to do anything there for the moment. We have to wait until the 1st of May to start that. At least be in the queue. Ange, I think that's why Zoom's now issuing passwords. So now issuing passwords forward from tomorrow. Yeah, I saw that, Ange, so there will be passwords. Keep the riffraff out. You're doing great. Thanks, Ange. What can I claim, if anything, Kane? I'm not sure specifically what that's in relation to. If you can be more specific, that works. I have an invoice 29/11/19 for a 90 grand piece of equipment, which I have a 4-month period before settlement due next week. Just organised, financed and approved. Can I claim the new write-off introduced recently? Could I claim back the GST for the March quarter? Anonymous attendee. There's about 30 questions to answer that. If you privately message me afterwards, jmarshall@mwmadvisory.com.au, send me a specific email, and I'll be happy to discuss that. But I'll end up sitting here for 15 minutes asking a bunch of additional questions to get to those answers. I'm more than happy to answer it. It just won't work in the current format. Mark Yule, regarding holiday and long service at this time. Not really sure what the question is, Mark. If there's a question, hit me back. Sole traders are eligible for JobKeeper operating through an ABN only or needs an ACN. Thanks, Jack. So a sole trader will never have an ACN. An ACN is an Australian company number, which means it's a separate legal entity. So you need to establish, are you a sole trader or do you have a company? And if you have a company, are you the employee of that company? Guys, have we got any other questions on that one, or are we pretty good? I think it looks as though we've covered off on most of those. Do you have, here we go, Damo, having a beer, mate. Yeah, Damo, I'm actually off the booze, mate. It's grand final day every day at the moment. It's pre-season, season and off-season, and now is season. So it's training hard and eating really healthy. There'll be one hell of a party at the end, I can assure you. Jordan, would you recommend going to a payment plan for 1 to 2 years for your BAS rather than getting business loans? Good question. I think they go hand in hand, Jordan. I think I'll come back to that one at the end because that's going to dovetail into the loans and talking about the ATO. I just want to make sure I cover off on all the payroll stuff. Specific advice about lodging the March quarter. Loving the Adam Scott hat. I didn't realise it's Adam Scott's hat. I think it's James Marshall's hat and Adam Scott wears it, personally. I've been wearing the old red hat for a little while longer than some bloke who reckons he's half decent at golf. All right, so payment plans here. Jordan, I'll come back to you on that, bud. Redirection of the business increases, capitalised. Will the JobKeeper cease once the revenue goes back to normal? Chris, that is an awesome question, and I haven't seen anything in here that says it doesn't. Everything is about a downturn. There seems to be no conversation about uptick at the moment. I think that's a stay tuned. I know how frustrating that is, but it's just an example of how many of those little gaps exist. It's great that you're thinking about that sort of stuff because they're the things we're going to have to constantly check in on. What will apply to owners who have drawings now and no income? Yeah. Okay, Tash, I'll be talking about that when we come down a little bit further with how and what we need to be doing in relation to funding any of the business's operating costs. All right, so I think there was a bug in that drink. That's disgusting. All right, folks, I'm going to move on to the next one here. So my next one is around cash flow boost. This is quite a complex area, and it's quite a complex area because what's going to happen is for anyone that does employ people, and normally at the end of every month or at the end of every quarter, we have to pay wages tax for our team and potentially ourselves, and we pay that off to the government in our BAS. What this is all about is saying they will pay the PAYG obligation for us. So when you're doing your budgeting, you're doing your cash flow at the end of every month. If you're paying $15,000 a month in PAYG, then it's the case that at the end of the month, you actually won't have to pay that. Once I've spoken and explained this to quite a few clients, they've realized that their break-even changes And their break-even changes because there's no need from a working capital perspective to have all this stuff up their sleeve. Not only that, and this is something I got to understand in more detail today, I think these are two important points. If you're an extremely small business and you don't have a large amount of employees, there is a minimum payment that will come to you. That minimum payment is $10,000 over the next 3 months, and then an additional $10,000 over the subsequent 3 months. How do you get that? You will get that in either your March activity statement or your March and subsequent activity statements. There's a variety of calculations in relation to that that make it a bit more complex as to at what point you get which bit. If you actually have a look in the big notes guide, there's a series of worked examples for that. If you're a large employer and in the first 6 months, the entitlement's 50 grand in the first 3 months, and then the entitlement is another 50 grand in the second 3 months. In the March month, if you are a lodger on a monthly basis and your PAYG obligation is greater than $50,000, you will be paid that in full for your March activity statements. There's been a lot of conjecture around, if I'm going to get 100 grand, it's 100 grand given to me over 6 months. That's not actually the case. This is where it's really important to get your payroll right for your March quarter activity statement, because in that March quarter activity statement, you may be able to receive up to $50,000 in that specific activity statement. So that will reduce your BAS bill significantly. Not to mention all the ability from there forwards around dealing with the ATO and putting them on payment plans. So this March activity statement is crucial, and it's crucial because it's not just the wages tax obligation for March. You have the ability to bolster what that obligation looks like. So if I add to that, and I've got a few additional things here, I've got things at different sizes. Daz, I need you to stop sending me emails, but I'm just going to work offline so that nothing extra comes up. That'd be awkward. What do I need here, folks? I need a Word document. I need to open that, and then I need to come back here. Where's the Zoom? Ew. Crap. Where is it? There it is. Share screen. Hopefully I've got this right, folks. Draft support, that one. All right. This will be a tester for us, folks. Can someone let me know if we can see that screen? I hope so. Chat. What's chat telling me? Yep. Thanks, Ev. Thanks, bud. So, folks, just to demonstrate, this is actually a draft. I've had a, as I said, a pretty full-on couple of weeks. This is something I put together with the team at the end of last week. If you're an MWM client, we will be sending you this to consider this week, so stay tuned. This is around what we can do in the March quarter activity statement. So the March quarter activity statement is not just claiming back some wages tax. There are additional components to what we can do here. So if you're a quarterly lodger for GST purposes normally, you can potentially look at moving to monthly and picking up GST refunds sooner rather than later if obviously there's been a downturn in trade. So the net difference will come back to you quicker. Big important note, make sure you've got Audit Shield in relation to that. So important. It's the cheapest thing in the world and it's the best policy under the sun. Don't be a tight ass. Spend the small amount of money to make sure that you have Audit Shield in play. In terms of that March activity statement, GST refunds we can pick up. Provisional tax refunds. So if you're paying provisional tax because your business makes money, the provisional amounts that exist in September and December can potentially be refunded back to you in the March quarter. Normally there's a rule that says if you get to the end of the year and you have a tax bill and the ATO have asked you to pay during the year and you haven't, they throw the book at you. Never really seen that play out in practice a lot. You do have the lodgers who are renowned for not doing that, and those numbers are big enough. Once they start becoming seven-figure sums, they kind of blow up deluxe about it. But in this instance, what they're saying right now is if you have paid tax during the year, you can look at getting all of that back in your March quarter activity statement if lodged correctly. As a result of that, obviously there'll be more cash that will come back in. There's then going to be the concept around payment plans and the refund that we're talking about. So, Jordan, yeah, as you were talking about, Bud, are we better off delaying the ATO in relation to everything? The starting point with the ATO is at the moment, there's 4 months for free up for grabs. There's an automatic position we can take, which gives you 4 months of no interest and not making any payments to them, so that you can give yourself breathing space. What does that look like in a longer term sense? It's going to be a suck it and see situation. Can you use that 4 month period to create a working capital position to support your business in the interim? Absolutely you can. As I mentioned in my webinar last week, everyone should have a COVID-19 account. So if you're deferring any of your payments or going, no, stuff it, I'll just pay it because I've got the money. I think what you should be doing instead is going and go and open a specific bank account called a COVID-19 account. We do this in my own business. And then if you are deferring payments to the bank, or you've got things happening with your landlord or the ATO, you can instead put it in that account. So provision for it so that you don't find yourself in a scenario where you get down the track and we're going to have more problems. Obviously, if the money's not there, the money's not there. I completely understand that. But I think there's going to be an approach there that over time will apply. And the most important thing right now is for you to work out your break even. So how much do I need to keep those doors open? Build that war chest. Do the right thing so you don't need to fuck over suppliers just because. We're all in this together. You need to open the communication channels and work out, okay, well, maybe I can hold on to some of that because I don't need to pay it to the government for the moment and I'll keep that buffer up my sleeve. What that looks like in 2 or 3 months' time, well, look, who knows? At the moment, it's about getting to the other side of the river. So that's a bit of a stay tuned piece. So that's the March activity statement. That will also apply. Look, the ATO seem to be quite lenient in relation to interest and penalties. Again, that's a communication piece and they're tooling up. FBT, well, if you're paying FBT, you should probably have a better chat with your accountant around how they're structuring and dealing with that. There are effective ways to deal with those things. Sometimes FBT does apply, but having a much thorough understanding of its application is important, especially now. And same with all your excise payments. So that's number 2, folks, in relation to employers and that cash injection. So when you're looking at you keeping your doors open, bear in mind, if there's $750 coming in the door and you're not going to have to pay wages tax because the government's going to pay it for you, that changes the product mix of how we will get through. Creditor stat demands. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm just going to come over to the questions area, folks, to make sure I haven't missed anything. All right. If I have a tax debt, does the cash flow boost? Yeah, Cheryl, good question. This is kind of a really shitty thing because it seems they giveth in one hand and taketh in the other. My mum used to do a good job of that when I didn't wash the dishes or penalise me in some way, shape or form because I'd try to be an angel and somehow she'd managed to find a way to demonstrate that I wasn't and what on earth happened. And she would giveth with one hand and she would well and truly taketh with the other. Love you to death, Mum. You are an amazing woman. But yes, they are saying that it will apply off the tax debt. I think where a challenge is going to be is they're talking about refunding this on the integrated client account. So if you have an income tax account debt, I actually haven't seen any communication piece yet that says it'll be offset against each other before they give you the money back. So let's just bear in mind that how does the money come off? Well, technically speaking, all of this is solely for wages tax, this 100 grand. The only people that are going to get it will be people who don't employ anyone, and they'll receive that 10 grand per 3 months. And look, maybe the ATO take the position to say, well, that 10 grand will be reducing your obligations with us to further benefit you. Catherine says she can see it. Kirst says she can see it. All good. Dave. James, were you aware for Dental BOQ is offering loans with repayments on the kicking in after 12 months? Yes, thanks to anonymous attendee. Yeah, every bank seems to be having different views on what's going on. Oops, and there we go. So I'll stop that share over here. Stop. Because my emails seem to consistently go. All right, there you go. It is not that easy trying to use a bloody mouse when your two screens are at different heights. It's a nightmare. I'll show you all the kit I've got shortly. I went and bought half of JB Hi-Fi in Camera House yesterday, and I've no bloody idea how to use it. So unfortunately, we're still using the old content or the old shitty $89 camera that does the job. Stay tuned because shit's going to get real very shortly and it'll be really cool. Yeah, Bank of Queensland, yeah, I have heard that. All the banks are taking different approaches and it's a case-by-case basis. Guys, nothing's off the table. That's what I keep saying to a lot of people. Like, don't be afraid to ask. It doesn't cost you anything to ask. And there's no shame in asking. I asked. I'm in a situation, I said to my bank, I'm going to hold on to that money if I can. I want to make sure that I have a war chest in my own business. The greedy, aggressive shark part of me says, I want to kind of hold on to that money because I actually might see some opportunities over the next 6 months. And as a result of those opportunities, I'm going to need some cash to be able to deal with that. So if I can preserve my capital in a way that doesn't negatively jeopardize things, I'd be mad not to. So I'm going to stick that money myself. I'm going to stick it in my COVID-19 account. If I get 3 months down the track and realize, I'm better off paying the bank, I'll just pay the bank at that point in time. Don't avoid the obligations and put your head in the sand and do the ostrich thing. Absolutely not. Stay away from that. But there is most certainly benefit in talking to the banks. They've all been given a very clear directive to do that. First call set up. Not sure what that means. Sorry. Dana, please send me Audit Shield. Yes, we can do that. Installment refund. Does that include personal tax? Yes, Ange, it does. So that's accessible at the personal level and at the trading entity level. Kane, main employee. Kane, I think the easiest way, mate, let's take this offline. Send me an email. I'll give you a buzz afterwards, bud, because I think that there's a few conflicting things in relation to that. And the last thing I want to do is balls it up and give you a non-clear direction in relation to that. All right, so folks, that's good. Creditor stat demands. This is the next one. So that's in the 45-page document of light reading somewhere. Bang, bang, bang. What page is that on? Solvency, page 39. Basically, it's quite difficult to sue anyone, guys and girls. Gender neutral, gender fluid, avatar, person, thing, it. Actually, not it or thing. Yeah, don't use those. You'll get yourself in trouble. I've been slapped a few times for using thing and it. Yeah, don't encourage it. Creditor stat demands, guys. Yeah, so at the moment, the courts are saying you can't press me on it. Same with the trading insolvent provisions. Don't kid yourself. It doesn't discharge your obligations as a director to do the right thing. So if you're in a scenario where you tell everyone to get stuffed just because, I genuinely think there's going to be an authenticity test at the end. I mentioned this last week. I've mentioned it the week before. Very carefully consider things there because people will judge you as an owner and a leader based on what you do now during the hard times because people try to show their true colours now. That's actually what's going on. The amount of people that have said, I can't believe these people are doing that or these people are doing that. Those that have kind of fairly heavily invested in NLP and a bit of psychology and understanding personality profiles, some of this shit doesn't actually come as a surprise. You realise how selfish some people are and how inconsiderate they are of others. And their behaviour is just demonstrating that. So be very careful if you go down those roads. Consult with your accountant, consult with us. Remember, I'm free in April. And on the weekend too. Just kidding. Yeah, that's a question for talking to your accountant. It's also a question for talking to your lawyers. Might be an opportunity to renegotiate things at the moment. What's that looking like? How can I reframe what's happening? How can I redocument that? Bit of a challenge out there for them in that space at the moment. Insolvency guys are also sharing a lot of information there. Okay, so that's that. Landlord and tenant. To me, this is the dickhead and no dickhead test. Let's just go back a step and explain what's happening here at the moment. We have competing jurisdiction. Those that have rented over the years, or those that have tenants that rent from them, and we'll use residential tenancies as the easy example. They're governed at a state level. So they have those things called an RTA, a residential tenancy agreement. You get a tenant in there, they sign a document, you sign a document, there's a bond that gets lodged at the state level, and that can be called upon if something happens in relation to the lease. If the federal government says, okay, you can't sue anyone and you can't chase dollars, and the concepts around, it's not that you can't sue anyone, it's just the provisions in relation to how critical statutory demands are, have been significantly changed, I think is a better way of putting that. That's at a federal level. But this rental piece is at a state level. So the states all have competing jurisdiction. For those of you that have got businesses in every state, you'll relate to this. It's a bloody nightmare. Maybe this will force our states to actually start to harmonise more of this shit. They were supposed to do that when the GST take came in, but they all decided to keep that money instead. So this might force us to change those things. The screen's kind of changing because they've got some sun happening on the side. So we'll see how we go. But it's a bullshit test and a dickhead, no dickhead test. And I've already had clients say, I'm a tenant, my landlord's being an asshole. I'm not going to take their calls anymore. Here's a couple of hot tips. I hate people that don't field calls. If you're in business and you're not going to take a hard call, harden up. You shouldn't be in business. Business is hard. It just is. And sometimes there's business owners that kind of become accidental business owners, and then they realise that, and by then it's all too late. But business is bloody hard. You're the last person to get paid. There's that age-old saying, I work 80 hours a week. I'm not appreciated. Everyone leans on me. I'm the last person to get paid. Who am I? I'm a small to medium business owner in Australia. It is bloody hard. There's no two ways about it. Pissing and moaning about it's not going to help. We've got to actually think laterally about it, lean into it, invest in ourselves and tune it up. So take the call with the landlord. If the landlord wants to be an arsehole, I think the very simple process to follow is that you want to demonstrate to the landlord that, hey, look, my business has suffered here and I do want to come out the other side. I've been encouraging clients in that situation to use a revenue test. So if revenue was X per month, go back and work out what your revenue was as a percentage of turnover. So if you did 100 grand a month in turnover and your revenue was 5% of that, your rent was 5 grand, well, it'd be 5%. If your revenue has dropped from 100 grand to $10,000, well then, technically speaking, your rent at 5% would be $500. If you open up that dialogue with the landlord and make sure there is parity there in some way, shape or form, and I've seen some landlords asking some pretty ridiculous things. I understand that on the landlord side. I'll come to that in a second. I'm a landlord myself, and I'll share with you the views I'm taking. Some of you might not like that. It's everyone's got an opinion and they're entitled to it. That's okay. So go to the landlord and explain that to them. So look, here's where I'm at. It's really shit. I completely agree. It sucks. That's unfortunately where we're at. And as a result, I'd be willing to come to the party with that. If you feel that you can't even do that, then I guess you're going to have the conversation with the landlord to say, I can't even do that. The landlords can't kick tenants out. So it doesn't matter how aggressive they get, it can't kick you out. So if you take the call from the landlord and say, look, here's where I'm at, turnover's dropped, unfortunately we're going to have to work something out. Guys, it's a fluid basis too. Remember that, right? What you agree on today, if the business conditions change in 3 months' time, we'll fucking change it in 3 months' time. This whole set and forget mentality in such a moving environment just doesn't work at the moment. You need to constantly be agile. Stick it back on a list and come back to it. So have a conversation with your landlord. Don't be a keyboard warrior. Don't waste thousands of hours of time stipulating all this shit. I've seen some emails that have been 5 pages long over people that are paying $1,000 a month rent. It's not worth the emotional energy, guys. Ignore that. Don't do it. Stand up, man up, warm it up and have a conversation. Write it down beforehand if you need to. If it gets heated and the landlord wants to threaten you with a lot of things, circle back and say, look, I'm really sorry. You're putting me in quite a difficult position here. I feel intimidated and I'm not able to progress the call. And then I'd get off the phone with the landlord and I'd document that. You know, dear Mr. Landlord, just confirming, I recently spoke to you. Here's what I said to you. I said, look, here's all I can afford. This is what's going on. I do want to work with you, but if I don't have a business, it's really hard to pay your business. And I want to make sure I'm at the end. I've actually got some templates in relation to how to communicate some of this. So if anyone wants any templates, email me on jmarshall@MWM Advisory. You can find it on the website. And I'll be happy to share those things with you. Don't start with the heavy-duty, long emails. Start with a conversation. You get pitch tone. You get to understand what that is. It might zig and zag in a different direction. Ask the landlord in the first instance, you must have a plan. What are you doing? If you find it difficult to confront that, start by asking the landlord. So, look, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, Avatar Landlord, what do you propose to do? Where are you at in relation to that? Landlords are generally business owners themselves, so they'll get it. But always take the call and then document the call afterwards. Make sure you document it. Really, really important. Make sure you document shit. Because this whole, oh, I called you on this date. Oh, no, I didn't. And if you email them and then they say, well, that's not what I understood, they'll do one of two things. They'll pick you up and they'll pick up the phone. They'll ring back and they'll say, no, here's what I meant. Let's get it organised. Or they'll say, blah, 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 and they'll carry on like a pork chop. And you'll say, look, I can't come to a resolution with you when you're like that. Hang up the phone and then send them another email. Look, again, thanks for calling me back. Kind of found it a bit difficult to talk to. Is there someone else within your organisation that I can talk to which may be able to help me better navigate this? I think for the tenant, if the tenant demonstrates that they are trying to do the right thing, then we're going to have a much better success rate here. There's already been conversations around what does it look like at the end? No one actually knows. Some people are loading that rent into the rest of the lease. Some landlords are saying, I'm not going to worry about it. Some landlords are saying, I'm going to take it from the deposit because the tenants have already got the deposit there. So they're effectively signing those deposits away. I think a case-by-case basis dependent upon the tenant, can exist. On the landlord side, I think you've also got to be demonstrating the same thing. You've got to be demonstrating that you're doing the right thing. If you're a landlord and you've got bank loans, then you need to be contacting the bank and you need to be looking at and making sure that you get some relief in relation to that. I have done that. I've had a couple of tenants say to me that at the moment they can't afford to pay any rent, but they're looking for ways to pay rent. They will go on the job keeper or job seeker area. And as a result, once they do that, they've made commitments to me to say, once I work out where I'm entitled in that space, I'll be doing my best to be able to pass that on and work with you as a tenant. So bear that in mind too, folks. Everyone's going to start getting this job keeper, job seeker stuff. So tenant and landlord, there is very much a positive obligation on you guys to have conversations in good faith. I've had some landlords say, look, I've got tenants that are just absolute grubs. They don't want to do the right thing in relation to that. And from my perspective, I've encouraged the tenants to document that. So if you've had a conversation with the tenant and the tenant says, get stuffed, I'm not paying anything because I don't have to, then I document that. So, dear old mate, thanks for being a knob. Well, actually, don't say that. But, dear Mr. Crappy Tenant, just confirming our conversation. You've said to me that you're not willing to pay rent at all because your business can't afford it, and then document it. Stop in there, do a drive-by each week. Get someone to phone up and prank phone up the business to establish, are they trading or are they not? And if they are, and it's all BS, ring the tenant back up. Bring it back up and say, hey, what's going on here, mate? I understand that you're still trading. Oh, no, I'm not. Well, actually, here's the following things that happen that demonstrate that you have. I keep coming back to the authenticity test. I know there's some bigger landlords that are clients out there who are grumbling and groaning about no rent. Look, I get it, folks. This is also now is not the time for grumbling and groaning. This is some medicine, and I don't fully enjoy saying it, but I need to say it, which is those that have got bigger shoulders need to step up and need to carry it along the way. I'm doing my bit. I'm giving myself away for all of April. That's a good 70, 80 hours a week at the moment. That's all given away because it's doing the right thing. You got tenants that want to be dickheads, document it. And when we circle back on all this stuff, I reckon over the next 3 to 6 months, there'll be specific provisions that'll deal with that. I don't know if we've got any questions on that. Can you answer? Hi, Carol. Can you answer commercial tenancy landlord tenant? They have been renting for years. Any suggestions? We have halved the rent already. Yeah, look, Carol, I think I've just spoken about that pretty much. We'll get on from there. Accelerated depreciation. Oh, guys, some of this other stuff I won't bore us with too much. But the accelerated depreciation basically means if you're buying new equipment, if we look at, let's just use simple maths. I was a veggie maths kind of guy. Actually, no, I wasn't. I was a maths C, physics, smart-ass chemistry kind of guy. But if you bought a $150,000 piece of equipment, you would ordinarily, in very, very simple terms, depreciate that over a series of years. To keep the math simple, let's say if it lasted 15 years, or if it lasted 10 years, you would claim 15 grand a year in depreciation every year. That's prime cost. There's accelerated depreciation methods, diminishing value. All you accountants out there, don't be smart asses about saying that there's alternative ways. I get there are. Let's just keep it simple. The $150,000 instead can be claimed up front. So in this year, you would receive a tax deduction for the full $150,000. Now, that might not be advantageous to a lot of businesses because everyone's struggling at the moment. But the concept is for some businesses that are tooling up and reskilling and regearing and doing a bunch of other things and going to markets, maybe it will benefit you. The concept is if you are upgrading any equipment at any point in time, now's probably the time to consider it if you do have the cash. That's also where a lot of these loans that are coming from are designed to help in relation to that, and I'll talk about that in a second. So accelerated depreciation is a thing, and it's something you need to be talking with your accountant about around how effective that is or isn't. Alrighty, so that's accelerated depreciation. Don't buy shit for the sake of buying it. And just so we're clear too, buying a $145,000 car because it's under the $150,000 does not change the luxury car tax provisions. They still apply. So if it was a truck or something that sat outside LCT for the purposes of depreciation, then yeah, look, that would exist. Apprentice trainee support. So if you've got apprentices, there's $7 grand a quarter available to you. From what I can tell, folks, that gets lodged through a different department and assessed by the Australian Apprenticeship Support Network. That's on page 22. If you had to stand down apprentices, you can re-engage with them. If you've had to stand down apprentices and you can get them a gig with someone else, this demonstrates the whole principle about the Morrison government trying to do the right thing by everyone. Other businesses can pick those apprentices up and they'll get the $7 grand subsidy. I think the key is, were you an apprentice at 01 March and where did you sit in the world? So that sits in the Australian Apprenticeship Support Network on page 22 of your documents. Backing business investment, to loan or not the loan? Yeah, good question. It wouldn't be the Gold Coast if people weren't borrowing money. So there's a couple of reasons for these loans, folks. It's been a lot of people say, well, why am I borrowing money? I'm going to give it back at some point down the track. My personal view is I'm not convinced that you can make decisions about where your business is at in definite positions as of today. Because who knows what's going to happen over the next 3 to 6 months? Things might go back to normal. They may redefine how we do everything. Sovereignty risk may come a thing. Governments may then all of a sudden put all their walls up and we have to produce everything internally. I think the concept is more around, do you want to keep going in your business and explore those avenues? Everyone's taking a haircut, which means everyone's in the same boat. So if from a working capital perspective, the JobKeeper, job seeker amount doesn't plug the gap enough in your business, then there are, or you don't have enough money to pay those JobKeeper payments, then there are loans available at a state and federal level to be able to support you through that. Something that's really important, folks, and I've got to work out where it is in this document. Loans are not a given. I had a few people say, oh, I'm just going to go and get all these loans. Well, the same rules still apply, folks, and that is that you've got to have a half-decent business. If you've got a business that's got millions of dollars in losses every year and you haven't made a cracker and it's all bullshit, I can't see how you're going to get access to all of this. Page 24. So page 24 talks about unsecured loans. So the government will guarantee those loans in the background. I actually don't know what that means around if the government's guaranteeing it and it's unsecured. Does that mean you never pay it back? I actually don't know. I haven't seen anything that's clear enough in relation to that yet. What they are saying is the loans are subject to the lender's credit assessment, although the government expects that lenders will look through the cycle to sensibly take into account the uncertainty of the current economic conditions. Your business is traveling all right and you've got a war chest. I'd still encourage you to look at this. And the reason for that is it's bloody cheap money. If it's really, really cheap money and you know you're not going to touch it for the moment, stick it in the COVID-19 account. That COVID-19 account can then be forming part of your war chest, because if shit turns to clay or things ramp up in 3 to 6 months' time, and all of a sudden you now need to get access to capital, how are you going to do that? And as we all know, it's the thing that we don't do that ends up being something that we need. So strongly consider, and I'm waving heaps of hands here. I'm not providing financial or legal advice in any way, shape or form, but strongly consider your working capital position. That's a conversation that you can have with your accountants, have a conversation you can have with me when we're looking at numbers and putting some modeling together in a spreadsheet for what's your level of comfortability around that. But just bear in mind, guys, everyone's trying to rush in and lodge their financial statements. If you can't answer simple questions like, what is your debt to equity ratio? What is your debt to EBITDA? What is your interest coverage? What is your liquidity ratio? If you can't answer those 5 simple principles when looking at your financial statements and do that with serviceability calcs, I would strongly encourage you not to lodge shit just because. This stuff will get assessed. How they assess it, I'm not sure yet because they're not making it clear enough. But what they are saying is the standard rules kind of do apply. Yes, we have to look through the speed bump that exists at the moment. However, don't be ridiculous about it and seem to think, oh, all of a sudden I'm just going to get access to all this money just because. They will be responsible in relation to this, in my opinion. So I think it's definitely something that your business should be looking at considering. So there's 2 levels of loans. There's a state government loan, especially in Queensland, that you can obtain. Just to recap on that, the Queensland government announced there's 500 million available up for grabs. For all those people that decided, I need my shit lodged straight away because it's going to run out of money. Here's a hot tip. There's 438,000 small to medium businesses in Queensland. I cannot see how the Queensland government will give 250 grand to the first 2,000 businesses and then give all to the rest of us. It just doesn't make any sense. The government's very much trying to do the right thing. We've also got a state government that's super right. How do I do that? That's right. We've got a Morrison government that's obviously left. So these lefties over here, they're going to make sure everyone can get as much as they can because that's communism. So I think it's going to be the case that will be more evenly distributed as it comes out. I'm yet to see anyone get access to any of that money either. So they're working their way through the assessment cycles. All right, so that's the loans, job support loans, Queensland government. Yep, so that's what I've just spoken about. So they have the ability at the state level to help stump up your wages because you know you're going to get paid from the federal government. So that's a specific conversation you need to have with your accountant and your bookkeeper, financial controller, CFO around making sure that that's what it's used for. Just note on that too, if the loan's more than $100,000, they are talking about taking a GSA. So for those that don't know what a GSA is, it's a general security agreement. So it's not completely unsecured. Less than 100 grand is unsecured. 100 grand to 250, they're going to take a GSA. So that may impede what things look like down the track. I've been asking people to consider that. What does credit ratings look like? People are like, oh, I don't want anything to affect my credit rating. I can't see how anything will affect anyone's credit rating at the moment. The banks simply need to get people through, and there's now hundreds of thousands of people that have deferred their loans. It will be the case down the track that at some point we need to assess how and where that goes from there. I keep coming back to, it's an authenticity test. They go and grab that money and bloody have fancy holidays and go and get fancy cars and, you know, carry on the weekends. Make sure it's used for the right purposes to do the right thing. To loan or not to loan, so that's that. Payroll tax, yeah, so for those that pay state-based tax, so that is the shittest tax in the world, if you ask my opinion. Here's a tax for employing people. So the states, if your payroll is greater than 1.2 million per year, including superannuation, the states will turn around and levy a tax to the employer on top of that, just because it's an old archaic bloody tax that was supposed to disappear a while ago. I don't know if that flickering is happening for everyone or not. There it goes. It was an old state-based tax that should have disappeared a long time ago. So at the moment, we're not paying that, and we can get refunds for that over the last financial year. In your book and in your pack, there's a whole heap of information on payroll tax. It is somewhere in there in amongst the 87,000 documents from page 29 onwards. Loan deferrals, you've got to do that. I said that. And who knows what else. Yeah, that's kind of it for me, folks. I brought that in at 3:25 today, so I'm getting a bit more organised. To give you an indication, we've got gimbals and bloody stands and fancy cameras and wireless mics and yeah, all sorts of things moving forwards, lighting equipment to be able to produce these in a higher def and higher space. So hopefully that content will get better for you. If anyone's got any more questions, fire them through, folks. Thanks for the great chat. Thanks, Sanj. And look, folks, just a reminder again, the link will be up. It'll be on YouTube and Facebook. We will have notes distributed outside of this. We will be sending to clients this forthcoming week details in relation to your March activity statements and to consider whether we need to help you with that or not. And like I said, I'm here to commit myself to the client base to get you guys through. So watch out for that email early this week, which will talk about what that is and how that works and operates. Make sure you talk to your respective accountant and manager within my teams so that we can get you organised and get that going. All right, what have we got? A few more questions. Carol says, thank you. Thanks, Carol. Equipment depreciation for purchases dating back to when? Bought in February. Yeah, and I'm still trying to work that out. We're going over all your stuff in the forthcoming week, so I'll talk about it then. It looks as though it applies, and I didn't see anything specific in relation to it. Let's see if I can quickly find that. Let's do it on the fly. Thanks, Live TV. It drives people in my office nuts when I wing this kind of stuff, but that's business. Super. We don't want to go anywhere near that. Where's the accelerated shit? Dum, 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 dum. Instant asset write-off. So that's on 17. Where's 17? 17. All right. B trading. All right. Okay, there it is. So the asset needs to have been acquired after 7:30 p.m. on the 12th of May 2015. So get in your DeLorean. Back to the Future was on last night. I love that movie. So good. Jump in your DeLorean. Say hi to Doc and Marty. Hook back to 2015. Check out what you bought then and what we've accelerated already or not. So we'll be pouring over the asset registers. If you're a long-standing client of MWM, we're pretty on the ball with making sure we accelerate depreciation. But if there's anything left to rape and pillage, now will be the time to do it. So 12th of May 2015, it needs to have been first used or installed ready for use as taxable property by 30 June 2020. So get that shit installed and get it working, Ange. It looks as though we're ready to rock and roll in relation to that. Was there a time frame to access it? Yeah, Sky, really good question. So pop quiz. The time frame is till the end of October. There's no early cutoff, folks. You can imagine how many businesses are lodging shit with their state government. Government's government, so they move at their own pace. I'll leave you to judge whether it's fast or not. Certainly not as fast as me in high school over 100 metres, that's for sure. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Carol. Aurelia, please give me information regarding the access to superannuation this year. Aurelia, we'll take that one offline around what that conversation looks like or not. There is details in the back of the pack. I think it's right at the end is the eligibility in relation to those things. Company owners drawings. Yeah, I've been thinking about it, Tash. I'll specifically come back to that with you guys knowing your circumstances. Thanks, Shan. Appreciate it, bud. Awesome. Thanks, John. Thanks, Di. Thanks, Gus. Thanks, sharing. Looking forward. Next one, lead by example. Thanks, Ange. Cheers. And guys, look, we'll send you a survey. Hit us up on the specific links. I'm also going to be posting smaller bits of content moving forwards as we break each of them down. Final thing I need to do is give the Budgie Smugglers a plug. Guys, you need to get some Budgie Smugglers in here. Shark time. Make it happen. It's the joys of live TV. Bit of humour, hopefully, for the afternoon to cheer you up. Thanks, folks. Thanks very much. I'll be in contact soon. See you. Bye.